Shalom Aleichem and welcome everyone, and we prepare for Shabbat Parshat Behar Bechukotai as we catch up to our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael who are also reading Parshat Bechukotai this week. In Parshat Behar, chapter 25, verse 10, Perek Chof Hei Pasuk Yud, it says, וקידשתם את שנת 50 שנה וקראתם דרור בארץ לכל יושביה יובל היא תהיה לכם ושבתם איש אל אחוזתו ואיש אל משפחתו תשובו. This parsha talking about Shemitah. Every 7 years leave the land fallow, and every 50th year the fields go back to the original owners. Servants go back, even the ones who had their ears pierced. What we see is that during Shemitah, you're not allowed to work the land. And any produce that grows on the land are abandoned. They're abandoned. You're not allowed to take them. It's only what you're allowed to eat, what you're eating. Anybody who wants to eat also can take it. And one of the reasons for this is to show that everything returns to its source, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem gave us the field. Hashem takes away the field. Oh, you can have it for 6 years. The 7th year it comes back to me. Similarly, during the Yovel, there is a law of sending out servants. Even the servant who had his ear pierced, like we mentioned, when the Torah says he's a Eved La'olam, he's a servant forever, still goes free during Yovel and goes back to his source. What's his source? Of being an Eved, a servant of Hashem. During the Yovel, the two things that go back are land and servants. Why the land and servants? Because, servant is a man, and it shows that a man has the power to return to his roots. Returning to Hashem. Doing teshuvah. From where we are right now, we might have strayed, have gone far away. Yovel, Shemitah is teaching us that we have the ability to return to our roots. Another thing that's returned back during the year of Yovel is the land. The land goes back to its original owners. What's the connection between land and man? Well, the pasuk we know says, Ki afar ata velafar tashuv. For you are dust, and to dust you shall return. That's why man is called Adam, because of Adamah, the earth, for man was taken from it. And it shows that man has the power, he's going to return back to it. And man has a power to return to his source, to return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. People sin, and people go away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from Hashem. The Gemara in Masechta Sota tells us a person doesn't sin until a spirit of foolishness comes into him. Really meaning that a person who would be able to think straight and wouldn't let his Yetzer Hara, his evil inclination, to take over, he would never sin. He would never sin. The only reason why he sins is because he gets fooled into it. And a person, after he sins, he has remorse. He feels bad for it. An average person, a regular guy, they sin and then they feel bad that they sin. And now he wants to do teshuvah, and he wants to return back to Hashem. But the Yetzer Hara returns. The evil inclination returns and says to him, you fell so deep, there is no way to return. Your sin is such a terrible sin. You did this sin. How could you come back to Hashem? It's over. Don't worry, don't waste your time with this spirituality. For this is the way of the Yetzer Hara. It first entices the person to go away from the traditions of his forefathers by telling him that if he follows the ways of his ancestors, he will have a difficult and bitter life. And perhaps his ancestors, they lived their way the way they did because it was appropriate for previous generations. But today, we're in an advanced society. And maybe those things, we can be more lenient. We can let things go. And then after he goes so far away from his roots and he starts getting feeling of remorse and he wants to come back, he wants to hold a Seder, he wants to have Rosh Hashanah, he wants to keep Shabbat again. The Yetzer Hara comes and tells him, you already went so far away. You think you can come back? And therefore the Torah commands that everything that has a connection to man should return to its original source. And with this, mankind will come to realize that if the land which is money returns to its source, then certainly he, who's the category of life, has the ability to return and to strengthen and walk in the footsteps of his ancestors. A person has to know that if he listens to the Yetzer Hara and that shows him that there is no hope, then it will be so and there will be no hope for him. Rahman al-Islan, we should never let the Yetzer Hara get us. As a mashal, Rav Gamliel Rabinowitz brings down this mashal. There were small and large fish swimming at the bottom of the ocean. And the small fish started to talk one to another. And one said to the other, why are we swimming around in the large darkness of this ocean? It's silly. Maybe, I heard there's a sun and it shines on the top of the ocean. We should go there. Why are we here in the bottom in the dark? So one of the other fishes said, well, we see here swimming with us are large fishes, older fishes. And we rely on them. If they say this is the best place for us, so this is the best place for us. One of the other fishes say, but this is silly. Why should we believe what they do? Maybe they're mistaken. So the older and larger fish heard all this conversation, and with a loud voice he said to them, I am not mistaken at all. I am much older than you. And I know that on top, closer to the sun, there's a danger of a net. A fisherman who will try to catch you. And I therefore warn you not to go up higher, because your end will be bitter and bad. Among these fish was one that already had gone to the surface and back. But he was a foolish. And in his foolishness, he contradicted the words of the large fish and told him, oh, this old man, this old fish, he's insane. Nonsense he speaks. I was up there. I saw the light of the sun. And I saw such amazing views. I saw ships sailing from place to place. And there was literally such an amazing time I had. And then he said, if you are worthy, the people will come and they will set out nets before you. And if you go into them, you will have such a pleasure that it's not possible to describe. I have seen it with my own eyes how fish have jumped into these nets and they were lifted up and up in such honor, and then I saw them being put onto these boats and they were dancing, enjoying it. It was such a great time. I saw it all with my own two eyes. It's not something I'm able to describe even. All the fish, all these small naive fishes were impressed by his smooth talk. And they all decided not to listen to the big fish, who was probably old and insane. And instead, they all went to the surface. And they were enjoying the sun, the nice weather, and they was watching the ships. And then they saw a net being placed, and they said, wow, they're coming to honor us, the men are coming to honor us. They quickly dashed into the net, and they were taken out of the water. They were being lifted up, and that's when they weren't able to breathe. And they started jumping on the boat, dancing as it was. But it was too late. And they realized now that this dancing was not a dancing of joy, but rather a dancing before death. Now they understood that without water, they had no hope to live. And they were at the moment of death. The parable is very strong and clear. Our forefathers who accepted upon themselves the yoke of the kingdom of heaven did not allow their souls to be affected by the Yetzer Hara. And we then walked in their paths. However, sometimes the Yetzer Hara comes to us and tells us, go to the surface, change your ways. Why you have to be so orthodox? Why you have to be so strict? It's a different world. It's nice there. You're going to dance there. You're going to have fun. But no, the truth of the matter is that you're not going to enjoy it. It's only momentarily until you realize the spiritual and physical destruction that is happening. How many youngsters think they're going to have a better life, and they start drugs, and they start all these different things, and they meanwhile destroying their spiritual and physical life. Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, should help us that we only follow in the footsteps of our forefathers and follow the Torah, and the Torah should never leave our mouths or the mouths of our children or the mouths of our children's children. Amen. Moving on to our next topic in this week's parasha, Parashat Behar, it tells us in verse Yud Zayin, chapter 25, verse 17, V'lo tonu ishet amito ve'yaretem Elohecha ki ani Adonai Elohechem. Each of you shall not aggrieve his fellow, and you shall fear your God, for I am Hashem, your God. Aggrieving a fellow Jew, hurting someone physically, we know is terrible. But also, words, embarrassing someone is just as bad. And don't think, oh, no one knows, no one sees. It's not a physical hurt. Hashem says, V'yaratem Elohecha, I see it. Onat devarim, aggrieving with words such as reminding people of their questionable and embarrassing past, reminding people of embarrassing incidents. The Gemara tells us that it is worse to hurt someone personally than financially, because monetary loss can be made up while humiliation lingers on. And shame often follows a person from place to place, haunting him, destroying his relationships, preventing him from developing new ones. Hashem sees it. Hashem knows the pain that the subject of your ridicule has sustained. And you should know that Hashem exacts punishment. Sometimes the punishment will take years to materialize. But it will happen. If an individual hurt someone through words, destroyed his life with just a few words, he will pay. The Penidim al Torah brings down an interesting story that took place. And if we think about this story, maybe we realize that if we offend someone, Chas v'shalom, if we offend someone, we will pay regardless of how long it might take. There was an uncle of a hatan, young uncle of a groom who was about to be married. He arrived from out of town to share in his nephew's wedding. And he drove to the home of the Kala, of the bride, where the reception was to be held. He rang the bell, which was promptly answered by the bride's father, and the two sat down and talked about their individual background, yeshiva life, going back as far as elementary school. And apparently the uncle and the Kala's father had been students in the same yeshiva during the same time. They began to share their experiences, remembering the past together in the yeshiva. And during the course of their conversation, the uncle reminded himself of an incident that had occurred during the period in yeshiva. He said, I remember one night you were in your dormitory room and the other students wanted to have some fun at your expense, and they locked you in from the outside, essentially trapping you in your room. And you banged on the door and pleaded to be released, but no one seemed to hear your cries. Do you remember that incident? Being reminded of the incident cast a very sad face over the bride's father's face. Of course I remember that night. I have kept that pain and humiliation with me throughout the years. Indeed, I said, and I say it again now, I would never forgive the person who was responsible for that night of what happened to me. When the uncle who had said the story over heard the father's reaction, he almost fainted. He was traumatized by this statement of contempt, for it was he who had locked the door and who had been the culprit who had committed this act against the Kala's father back in yeshiva. Now what? The uncle was disturbed, and so he went to a posek, he went to a halachic authority to ask them what to do in such a case. And the Rav said the best would be to go and ask for mechila. And the uncle listened to the rabbi and proceeded to the Kala's house to reveal to her father that it had been he who had traumatized him years ago in the yeshiva. And he was now asking for his forgiveness. And he explained it was only meant to be a prank. I didn't intend to hurt you. I didn't mean to cause you distress for the rest of your life. But 30 years had elapsed since that fateful day, and much suffering has been gathered by the act of a teenage foolishness. At first, the Kala's father hesitated. He did not want to forgive. It was so painful, a pain that he carried for so long. But on the other hand, he could not look at the pleading man's face and turn him down. He agreed and absolved him on the condition that he would never hurt another person again. The uncle immediately accepted the resolution and promised to go out of his way to be extra sensitive to the feelings of others. In postscript, 1 year following the incident, the uncle came knocking on the bride's home for a third time. And this time he appeared with a shining face and a smile ear to ear. I have come to inform you that my wife just gave birth to our first child after 26 years. One teenager's trauma and lack of forgiveness for his pain had resulted in the culprit's childlessness for 26 years. Just because of a teenage prank. For 26 years this man went without a child. How important it is for us to be extra sensitive during these weeks of Yemei Sfira. We're learning Pirkei Avot. It's important for us to take those concepts to heart and to become a better person. Extra sensitive to everyone. In Parshat Bechukotai, it's a parsha where we have the blessings and the curses. If a person follows the Torah, he'll be blessed. If a person does not follow the Torah, Has v'Shalom, the Torah has many bad stuff to say about that. The blessings that come has been asked a question on it. But we know that there is an Olam Haba, there is in the next world. And Hazal teach us that Hashem pays back the tzaddikim for all their mitzvot in the next world. Because that is the real world, Olam Haba, the eternity. And in this world, He punishes the tzaddikim for a little bit wrong that they did, so that when they come to the next world, they can get their full amount of reward. Whereas for the Risha'im, for the evil people, just the opposite. In this world, they're paid back for the little mitzvah that they might have done. And whereas they got paid back everything here, and they end up in the next world, they completely get punished and never enter Gan Eden. But in this week's parasha, it says a person keeps the Torah, he'll have rain at the right times, he'll have this, he'll have that, he'll be very strong, you'll eat well, you'll have a lot of food. So how do we see this? If the Chazal tell us that tzaddikim, for the mitzvot, you get paid in the next world, how in this world do we get paid for it? So last year, on the Shir in Behar Bechukotai, we went through a whole thing. You can find the Shir on JAP. And just to mention what we mentioned there is from the Rambam. And the Rambam says that the material blessings the Psukim tell us here are not really the reward. They're just an extra tool to help us do more mitzvot. If you have a good food, you can do more mitzvot. If you eat well, you can learn more Torah. You can do so. Hashem makes it nice, but that's not actually the reward. The reward is really in Olam Haba. The Hafetz Haim explains the Hazal that tells us that tzaddikim get paid back in the next world and not in this world. Hafetz Haim said as follows: the daughter of a very wealthy businessman was soon to get married. Her parents were busy making arrangements for the wedding, and her father made a list of all his friends and associates that he wanted to invite. Now he knew he also needed to invite the employees that he employed, but was concerned that their presence at the wedding will greatly disturb his distinguished guests. So many of his employees were simple villagers whose behavior was far from refined, and their coarse table manners would undoubtedly be annoying to his business associates and other high society guests. So he had an idea. He decided to make a festive meal on the day before the wedding. There would be an orchestra, a sumptuous banquet, and just the workers would be invited. And so it was. He rejoiced with his employees as if it was an actual wedding. His employees had a wonderful time, for they were free to be themselves. Had they been required to sit and demonstrate etiquette and table manners as befits the companies of the well-to-do, they would have been miserable. It would have been impossible for them to feel at ease. The next day, the wealthy father of the bride was able to celebrate the real wedding with all of his friends and distinguished guests, undisturbed by the coarser company that had been enjoyed the feast the day before. Hashem rewards the wicked in this world so that He will not have to invite them to His true celebration with the tzaddikim in Olam Haba. There Hashem turns to the tzaddikim, as it says in the pasuk, Ufaniti alechem, and I will later on turn to you. Your reward comes afterwards. Just Hashem and the tzaddikim in Olam Haba. Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek la'olam haba. All of Israel has a portion in the world to come. They once asked, I believe the Hafetz Chaim, they asked him, if Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek la'olam haba, if all of Israel has a place in Olam Haba, then why do we have to work to get our place in Olam Haba? Why have to do mitzvot? The Hafetz Chaim answered back, he said, how do you want to enter Olam Haba? They come in, they say, okay, why are you coming into Olam Haba? And you say, oh, because I'm a Jew. And what mitzvot do you have? And what Torah do you have? Nothing. Oh, so you're coming in on tzedakah? You're coming in on a charity check? People are going to be embarrassed. But if you can come in and say, the Torah I learned I have in my hands. The mitzvot that I did I have here in my hands. Oh, such a person is much more welcomed into Olam Haba and feels that he belongs there and doesn't have to feel like he just got in there by accident or just by default. How important it is for us to strive for the best place in Olam Haba, doing a Torah and learning Torah and doing mitzvot, being extra sensitive, realizing that it's never too late to return back to Hashem, and wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom.